Well, that is Governor Boyega Oyetala reacting to the outcome of the primary election. Now, the task before him now will be to face squarely the main election, which will not be within his own party and some of the crises that rose, but he will now have to contend with several other candidates across the political party and across the length and breadth of the state. He needs their vote, and there is a degree of vote that is needed for him to be returned as governor if he wants the second term. But some members of the party, that is the APC, in the state are not happy, especially the Osun Progressives, a group loyal to former Governor Rauf Aregbesola. One of the leaders of the group will be joining me tonight virtually from Osogbo. Well, he will be joining us in a moment, but from our Lagos studio, we have joining us the Chief Press Secretary to the Osun State Governor, Mr. Ismail Omikpidon. Later on, we will be joined by Mr. Kalakpo Alimi, who is a lawyer and one of the leaders of the Osun Progressives. Thank you so much, Mr. Omikpidon, for joining us tonight on the program. Let's begin the conversation with you, and let's get the feelers from your own side, because there was a sharp divide. Of course, from your ranks, there were denial that there were no divisions, but it was obvious that there was a division, which in fact led to some kind of violence that we saw. But what is the effort, if there is any, to reach out to the former Governor Aregbesola? Is your principal thinking in that respect?
Thank you very much. Let me start this way. It wasn't a denial as such. How do I mean? Until probably about a month ago or so, all along we had thought and believed very strongly that those who call themselves members of the Osun Progressives were doing whatever they were doing without the endorsement and the consent of our former governor, the current Interior Minister, Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola, until I think about 3 weeks ago when he came out openly to say that, incidentally, I was on a program that morning and the same question was put to me. And I stated it clearly that as far as I know and to the best of my knowledge, I am not too sure those who were speaking then were speaking for him or speaking on his behalf. Later that afternoon, he was at a function in Elisha where he stated pointedly that for those who are still guessing as to where he belongs, that this is where he was. And by his own pronouncement on that fateful day, he said that Egbeti Pinsi Meji Losun, meaning that there's a division within the party in the state. So it wasn't a denial per se, but it was based on what we thought were the real situation until it came out. And talking about reaching out, to the best of my knowledge, before the Saturday primaries, my principal and even other leaders of the party did everything within their powers to reach out to our brothers. And from Mr. Governor's acceptance speech, he stated it clearly that the doors of reconciliation is still very open. Let me also place on record that contrary to insinuation in some quarters, my principal did not at any point shut out either the minister or the members of top from the party. For instance, when we were doing the revalidation exercise, I am very much aware that once Chief B.C. Akande had his revalidation done, my principal had his own done, and the next thing, my principal reached out to our former governor. It wasn't as if I was told I was there when the call was made, to request him to make himself available for the revalidation exercise. My principal suggested to him dates, and he told my principal there and then that those days were not convenient for him, as he was going to travel with Mr. President to either Katsina or Kaduna, and that he was going to give my principal 48 hours notice whenever he was ready to have his revalidation exercise. Unfortunately, we didn't hear from him, only for us to hear him from Elisha saying to the public that they were trying to deny him of opportunity to do his revalidation exercise. I thought I should make that point very clear.
All right, but let me ask you, I'm very certain because before we go into what happened on Saturday and the aftermath of that on Sunday, I'm very sure that you have heard, and your principal probably will have heard, the accusation and allegations coming from the minister Aregbesolah's side of that of betrayal. The allegations were that of betrayal coming from your principal. How is your principal reacting to this kind of allegation?
Well, when you talk about betrayal, I think it is important to probably put before the public the substance or the issues that make up the betrayal. What I've heard from even the minister himself and some of its loyalists were that the current governor, my principal, tried to undermine him by allegedly rubbishing, his legacy. And my attitude to that is that governance should not be about individuals' interests. Governance should be about the collective interests of the generality of the people. And talking about some of the policies, especially that of education, Shegun, thank God you were the one who anchored the governorship debate in 2008 on behalf of Channels Television. And this question about single uniform and what have you was put before my principal on that occasion. And I recall after my principal tried to defend the policy and even give the rationale behind the introduction of the policy in the first instance, you went further to ask him, since it appears the people are not too comfortable with that policy, what will he do if he becomes the governor of the state? And I recall, because I was the political reporter of the Sun at the time, I recall him saying that, well, he believes that there was no policy that was cast in iron, and that if the people wanted the policy to be tinkered with, he would be willing to look at it. Again, let me place on record that of all the candidates who stood for election in 2018, all of them, including the former SSG, Moshood Adeoti, who was the minister's choice for yesterday's election, said publicly that they were going to reverse those policies. It was only my principal that didn't give a categorical statement as far as the policy was concerned. So if you look at it, what that meant was that ab initio, the policy was probably not very popular with the people. And when my principal became the governor, he embarked on a thank you tour to find out from the people what exactly they want the government to do for them. Apart from asking for roads, asking for water, one other thing the people asked for was a reversal of that policy. Again, there was a UK DFID citizen needs assessment exercise that was carried out. Top on the list of the wish list of the people of the state was this issue of a single uniform, a merger of schools and what have you. When we had our first cabinet meeting in November 2019, without prompting, the Ministry of Education came up with about 46 lists of items that they wanted the cabinet to look at that meeting. Top on that list again were this issue of single uniform and what have you. But for Mr. Governor, the cabinet wanted the matter discussed that very day and decision taken, but Mr. Governor said no. That, look, why don't we invite experts to help us look at this issue holistically? And that was what led us into setting up the panel led by Professor Oluaina, a foremost educationist. That panel had the former WAEC registrar. It also had Professor Payo Banya, a foremost educationist. It had Lieutenant General Alani Akinade, retired, another statesman from the state. Those were the people who sat down, looked at those policies, and they came up with their recommendations. Part of their recommendations was that Osun was the only state at that time that was running an education policy that was at variance with that of the federal government. And you know, you cannot be an island. And so they recommended that we should go back to the 6334 system as against the one that was introduced. Again, the issue of single uniform, the whole school in the state were to use one single uniform. It was creating issue of security challenge for us because we're being inundated with security reports every now and then.
All right. Let me, because I'll bring in, in a short while, I'll bring in Mr. Kolakpo Alimi. I guess there has been some difficulties in the connection. But there has been some violence and pockets of attacks that we've seen. The one that was obvious was the attack on the campaign office, the Oromiyan House, which is along Bongon Road in Oshogbo. And allegations are that these are orchestrated by supporters of your principal. How is your principal reacting to it? Why did things degenerate to that point?
Well, Shehu, my reaction to that is that first, if you look at the two characters, do a critical analysis of their personality, interrogate their personality, profile them, I'm sure the outcome, you'll be able to determine who, between the two of them, has capacity for violence, has capacity, to precipitate crisis. You recall that about a week ago or so, there was shooting in the state capital. And the police report is out there in the public. The police report indicted the Minister of Interior that they were the ones who were shooting without provocation. And so, all along, we have tried as much as possible to maintain peace, to maintain law and order in the state. If they had issues among themselves, they should not come and accuse our government of instigating such a violence. Go and check the history of the state very well. In the history of the state, this is the first time for unbroken 3 years, you will not hear of civil unrest, you will not hear of labor unrest, including students' unrest. It is unprecedented in the history of the state. And so, for a man that has been able to live that clean slate, he cannot descend so low to begin to engage in violence. I say to you that even the election we had on Saturday, part of their plans was to instigate violence with a view to discrediting the process. But you know, in any fight, if Mr. A is willing to fight and Mr. B is refusing to provide the opportunity for the fight will never take place. And so, even though they tried to provoke some of our supporters, even though they planned for violence, we ensured that we never gave them the opportunity for it to happen. And that was why, in spite of the tension, the election on Saturday came and went as if nothing happened in the state. So it is not correct to accuse our government of precipitating violence.
Okay, so let's talk about, just to give an update, our expectations are that Mr. Kolakpo Alimi will be able to join us, albeit the technical issues we're having. We might be able to get reactions on yesterday's exercise. But let me ask you, there are allegations of irregularities from the former Governor Aregbesol's divide, saying that some of the members belonging to their own side, the supporters, were being barred and not allowed into the arena. Materials were snuffed out of circulation to their own side. These are allegations they are claiming are orchestrated by your own side, by your principal and those who are his supporters.
Well, we had direct primaries. What are the materials they are talking about? You don't need any ballot paper to vote. All you needed to do is go there, check your name, do your accreditation, and queue behind your preferred aspirant. So I don't know which material they are talking about that was being stopped. You see, sometimes people just sit down in the comfort of their rooms and begin to make all manner of allegations. The truth is that they probably never believed that what happened on Saturday would ever happen. But you see, except that they just want to live in the past. Otherwise, in the build-up to these primaries, Mr. Governor didn't take anything for granted. As a matter of fact, in spite of the fact that critical stakeholders from all the 9 federal constituencies had their meeting, sat down, and endorsed Mr. Governor one after the other, he still went ahead to meet with the people one-on-one. He went around all the 30 local governments plus one to seek the support of party members to seek a re-election. So the people who claim that we were not popular, who claim that we never had the party on our side, when they saw the massive support from not only the party members, but also from the traditional rulers, they quickly put what looked like what we were doing together. And that was why you had them in Ijebu-Jesha, you had them in Iwo, and you had them in Ikire. So they were able to visit only 3 places, whereas we went around the whole state. So you cannot expect a man who you cannot fault based on performance, a man who you cannot fault based on comportment, and in spite of that, he didn't take anything for granted. He still went to the people, and you only came about 2 or 3 days to the election, and you want to compete with such a person. It is practically impossible.
Can you react to the alleged hijack of the process? Because they're claiming and they're saying that, look, what happened was that the structure of the exercise itself were dominated by those supporters and those who are on the group or the side of the governor. And so from the beginning, it was skewed against them.
There was a stakeholders meeting on Friday. At the stakeholders meeting was initially slated for 4. From 4, it was pushed 4 to 5. I think we got there about 5 or thereabout. In spite of the fact that, according to the committee, they got the consent of the 2 other aspirants to attend the meeting, we waited for over an hour. As a matter of fact, before the meeting even started, the secretary of the committee said perhaps we should give them another 10 minutes, before we start the stakeholders meeting. And behold, they showed up after the expiration of the 10 minutes. And when they came at the stakeholders meeting, they only raised 2 issues. One, they demanded for a copy of the guidelines, which was obliged them. 2, specifically, the former SSG, Moshood Adeoti, demanded to see the registrar, the party's register. And it was also provided for him. And he went through, incidentally, the one he saw was that of the ward of our former governor. And he went through by himself, and he said, well written. And so, if there was any issue, I believe that it should have been raised at the stakeholders meeting. There was no any reservation. Even at that, when the process started on Saturday, he granted interview to journalists. And he said it clearly that the process was going on smoothly. So at what point did they have a change of mind that something happened with the process? I think they are just crying foul where none existed.
But, I mean, what is the way forward now? Because we understand that they, according to what the conversation and some of the issues that they've raised, they're claiming that they have a watertight evidence that the exercise was rid of too many irregularities. Is your side thinking of reaching out to them? Because if they go forward, it will further divide the party and polarize the already tense atmosphere in your party.
Well, Mr. Governor from the one, in fact, immediately after the World Congress, the local government and that of the state Congress, Mr. Governor, before the national headquarters of the party set up its National Reconciliation Committee, Mr. Governor set up his own Reconciliation Committee. And even when the local government caretaker committee chairman were sworn in, Mr. Governor charged them to ensure that they reach out to aggrieved members of the party. So at every point in time, Mr. Governor does not miss the opportunity of ringing it to the ears of our party leaders, to our party stakeholders, on the need to bring people together. Yesterday, or early this morning rather, when he was reading his acceptance speech, he stated it clearly that for him, we are all winners, and that he's inviting those who contested with him to join hands with him so that together we can build Osun of our dreams. So we have never, for one day, foreclosed reconciliation. But you see, what we say is that there must be sincerity of intention. They must be genuine, with their reconciliation. And so we are not foreclosing reconciliation. We believe very strongly because ordinarily, if we go by media reports, what they said was that if they carry the day, we will support them. That's after the primaries. And as if we carry the day, they will support us. So I expect them to walk their words by supporting us, since we have carried the day as far as the outcome of the contest is concerned. In any case, we don't see them as enemies. We see them as brothers and sisters, and we believe that before the July election, majority of them will come back home, if not all of them.
All right. Ismail Omipidon is the Chief Press Secretary to the Osun State Governor Boyega Oyetola. Thank you so much, Mr. Omipidon, for your time tonight. Unfortunately, we made our efforts to connect with Kolakpo Alimi, who is a lawyer and a member, one of the leaders of the Osun Progressives, who is a group, the group loyal to the Minister of Interior and former Governor of Osun State, Rauf Aregbesola. But hopefully, we might be able to get their own side some other time. Well, thank you so much.